Welcome to the Art of Healing podcast, the podcast that is dedicated to helping you connect with your mind, body, and spirit. This is Charlize, physician and Reiki master, and thank you so much for joining me. I would like to remind you that although I'm a physician, the information you receive in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. You can find my full disclaimer at my website, www.healingartshealthandwellness.com. If you like what you hear on this podcast, sign up for my weekly newsletter. Check your show notes for more information and for the link to sign up. Thank you. Welcome back to the Art of Healing podcast. This is Charlize. Today's topic, I would like to discuss some of the challenges and the myths that can happen when you're trying to create a meditation practice, and I'll offer some advice to help get through those. So if you have looked at any of my other content or read any of my blog posts, you'll see a very common theme, which is that I'm frequently discussing a meditation practice. I do this because I treat individuals in two settings. I am a Reiki practitioner, and then also I'm a practicing clinical physician. So of course, if someone were to ask me what is the number one cause of illness, I would say stress. At the root of every illness that I deal with, stress, either acute stress that is chronic, is at the root of that illness. And one of the easiest ways we can alleviate stress, learn to identify stress, maybe with even more practice, learn to master our minds when dealing with stress, is with a meditation practice. So I have a few blog posts in which I discuss how you can get started with meditation, ways to get started with meditation. And of course, I'm working on recording some meditations to help, to provide some help. But I do hear a lot of the same challenges and mostly from my patients, where the concept of meditation is very new to them. Before I get too deep into it, I do want to present the idea of meditation as a practice. So, which we somewhat think about it. We often think about an activity as a practice, such as I'm in the practice of medicine, or someone has a yoga practice. So when we say practice, keep in mind, we're saying that we don't have that activity perfected, that we return to the activity over and over, hoping to gain more from it, hoping to give more to it. But in a way, when we say practice, we're not saying that we're ever going to perfect this activity. Matter of fact, we are sort of making a pledge that we will never have perfected it. Meditation as an activity is a personal healing practice. I like for individuals to think of it, if you're starting this, as an activity that you're going to devote your time to for part of the day, you're going to devote your energy to, and preferably, if at all feasible, you will have in mind a place that you want to do it daily, or you'll have at least a time that you have picked out, even if the place needs to change. But that if you're going to be starting meditation, I often ask my patients to try this. And I do have a course that corresponds to this, which is 21-Day Meditation Journey. That one's the 21-Day Meditation Challenge. So basically, the way that I like to think of it is like if you were going to start yoga at home, if you were going to start resistance training, or if you were going to start walking, you're going to devote your time and attention every day to this activity. In terms of meditation and that practice, you especially when you're very first beginning, I like to lean more on the devotion of daily rather than seeing that you will succeed, that there will be a success at the activity. Because, as we know, it is a practice. And of course, when you are meditating, there will be challenges, there will be things that come up, there will be interruptions, external or internal, that disrupt the practice. One of the most common issues that I believe I hear whenever I'm talking to my patients that have something like anxiety or insomnia, when I introduce the idea of a regular meditation practice, is they often say, well, I can't sit still. I can't sit still quietly for that long. There's just no way I can do that. It makes me feel nervous or agitated. Many individuals often say they will feel worse. They will feel anxious if they attempt to sit still or sit quietly. And definitely that's understandable. So, how can we deal with that challenge? So, a lot of people don't realize that you can actually meditate or be in a mindful state while you're doing something else. For instance, a very common practice for meditation students, I am studying a meditation course right now, is walking meditation. And it's just as it sounds. You will bring yourself into a quieter mind state while you are walking. And this can be done without any guidance. Actually, I can just talk you through it right now. So, if you want to do a walking meditation at some point when you're taking a walk, as you start walk, just start to walk at a comfortable pace. Not so much that you want to walk with lots of speed, but at a pace where you're moving, but moving comfortably. And at the first stage of it, just focus your attention on your feet, paying particular attention to where your feet touch the ground. And you may even say something like, my right foot touches the ground, my left foot touches the ground. And then you can gradually move your attention up to, my right leg flexes, my left leg flexes. And then moving your attention up, I take a breath. I take a breath. So it's really that simple. So you can do a walking meditation, which so I like to walk for exercise. That's actually one of my main activities is walking. So when I do this, my favorite, my pleasure, times it's a guilty pleasure, but I love my audiobooks. I love Audible. I would love to tell the listeners that everything I listen to is very astute and very educated and very highbrow, and that I only listen to self-improvement. That is just not going to be honoring my highest self. So when I'm listening to Audible, I am listening to lots of science fiction. I have one particular book that is a guilty pleasure of mine. It's the You series. I shouldn't go too much into that, but so when I'm doing my typical walk, I would usually be listening to an audiobook. But if I decide I'm going to walk to do this in a form of meditation, I would perform my walk without audio input. And that way I can devote some of my attention to listening to sounds, listening to the nature around me, or using my eyes to really see the colors, to really witness these. So, and that's a skill. I'm learning it. And at some point, I will actually create a walking meditation to download, because I think that's a really nice way to help anyone that's wanting to meditate but does not feel they can sit still. The next issue that I frequently hear, and definitely this happens to me, although after participating in a meditation practice for years, I'm embracing this, is I can't stop my mind from racing. I can't stop thinking. That's why I can't meditate. My thoughts race. So of course, that sort of racing mind, lots of mind chatter. We call that chitta in the practice of yoga. Um, Plagues all of us at different times of our life, at different times in our day. Maybe it's constant. A lot of individuals with insomnia, particularly, will complain of this mind chatter that and the phenomena that they describe, and we all experience this. I don't think this is just my patients. Is that as they're settling into sleep or getting even drowsy, that the mind chatter will start almost like a machine of, an object, a thing to worry about, that they begin to add layers on, takes on a circular pattern until it's a thought that just really just keeps re-energizing itself, and it just goes and goes and eventually disrupts sleep, wakes them up, and even gets the heart pumping harder, and really is not conducive to sleep. And for many individuals, this happens during meditation. And if they're attempting to meditate, it is very hard to know what to do with this, and it feels disruptive. So what do we do about it? So my advice, if you are performing a meditation practice and you've decided that you want to use a guided meditation, such as my program, the 21-day meditation challenge, if you're in a meditation and the racing thoughts happen, you can honor those thoughts, give them a brief second. If you have guidance, try to tune back into the guidance. Do your best not to get upset with yourself. Do your best not to get angry with yourself. But with practice, you'll soon learn how to train your mind, how to move away from those racing worry thoughts back to where you desire your attention. So if it's a guided meditation, odds are you desire your attention to be on the guidance that's walking you through this meditation process. If you're doing just breath work, if you're maybe deciding, I'm going to meditate and I'm just going to use my breath, or you're a yoga practitioner and you're doing pranayama and you're just wanting to do that, if the racing thoughts start to, surge ahead, then just try to take your attention back to your breath. So that advice, it's really easy for me to give that advice just kind of casually, but I know it's difficult, and it is difficult for me. Definitely when my stress levels are higher, I find it very hard to return my mind away from those worry thoughts to my putting my attention back where I want it in my meditation. This is where that thing of this is practice comes in. So if you're in a meditation session and let's say the mind matter, the worry thoughts, the chitta are intense and they won't stop, I would advise you to continue your meditation practice. Stay in that practice, even with the thoughts racing. I know that sounds like torture. However, if you're trying to create this practice and create this habit, it will help you grow personally. It will help you grow spiritually to finish out the practice. This doesn't mean that the practice has failed, not at all, but it's simply good maybe at the end of that practice to honor that process. Also, if that's happening in more than one session of meditation, if you're tracking yourself over 21 days and you're at day 3, 4, and 5, and that keeps happening, at the next session, maybe take something that you can journal or write with, and maybe write down the worry thoughts before you attempt to meditate, or go ahead and do your session and then document the worry thoughts afterwards. Just put them on paper. Again, not that you're going to act on them and you really don't want to judge them, just to put them somewhere else other than your mind can be therapeutic. And I hope that makes sense. And I hear that so much from my patients that, I'm not going to be able to stop these thoughts. And I'm not even you should try to stop them. Just understand that in your meditation journey, in your journey of learning to work with your mind in your breath, this is part of it. So it hasn't failed. This is going to be a stage that you go through, but if you'll have faith and keep trying, that stage should resolve itself. The next challenge I often hear from individuals that are wanting to meditate but don't know how or feel overwhelmed with the thought of it is simply, I'm going to fail. So this is probably the most important, that they feel that they will start meditating. And, I think probably because they've seen images online, images on Instagram or Pinterest that show an individual sitting in perfect stillness, cross-legged on a beach, not moving. And the image gives you the feeling that they've been that way for 45 minutes in perfect peace and just downloading all this information from the universe. And so they think, well, that's not going to happen for me, so that's a failure. So this myth is the biggest one to dispel. If you have decided you want to meditate and you want to start with 5 minutes a day and you sit down and do 5 minutes a day, you've already succeeded. You have succeeded. From the time you decided to do it, that was a success, to the process of doing it, that was a success, all the way to completion. Now, what transpires during that event, that can vary, but there essentially is no way that you can fail. Your experience may vary each time you attempt to meditate, each time you meditate, but it doesn't mean that it failed. The most important thing is that you're setting the framework of working with your mind and getting used to this practice that is something you can do your entire life. I have to tell the listeners, I work with patients in their 90s. I work with patients that are over 100 years old. And I really love the idea that there's an activity that you can do at the age of 5 and at the age of 100. Well, there's several. You can breathe, your heart can beat. And at any point in your life, you can meditate and reap benefits, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So there's no way that you can fail at this. There's no failure. The experience may not always be pleasant, but if you'll just please take it on faith that even by listening to this podcast, you've succeeded. Even by thinking about it, you've succeeded. Even by making an attempt and getting up and running off because you didn't want to sit in that silence, you succeeded because you've had the experience and you're constantly growing. As always, thank you so much for joining me for today's podcast. It's always a pleasure to share this time with the listeners, and feel free to share with me. I will share my email, which is charlize@healingartshealthandwellness.com. Send me an email if you've got questions about meditation, if you have questions about Reiki. Definitely send me an email if there's a topic that you would like me to discuss. If you've listened or read some of my other content and there's a topic that you have questions about, I would definitely love to engage and find out more of what you all are thinking. So much gratitude for spending your time with me. Thank you so much. And until next week, bye-bye. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Art of Healing podcast. Once again, this is Charlize. You can find out more about me at www.healingartshealthandwellness.com. Did you know I have a blog as well as online courses? Check your show notes to sign up for more information about Healing Arts Health and Wellness. Thank you. Please feel free to share this episode with your friends, family, and loved ones.